Hi everyone, welcome. Nice to see you guys here. Thanks for joining in. This is our first time here, so also at any moment, please feel free to raise your hand and chat. I'll just give it a few more minutes and wait for others to join, and then we can start. Nice. Also, meanwhile, please feel free to use the chat freely. Nice. I can see that you hear me. Some reactions in the chat already. From Philip and Thijs, who will be presenting today. Hello, Lucas. Nice to see you guys here. So yes, feel free to chat. If you guys have any questions there, I'll keep an eye on it. And we'll have some Q&A throughout. I'll get into the housekeeping in a bit. And yeah, really looking forward to it. Voice is good, nice. It's great. Everyone can see my screen also. Nice. Let's give it a few more minutes. Wait for a few more to join in. Hi Mountain, hi Sima, hi Jonas Lod, Vinny Hell, Alona, Bitsquits, Venture, Magnet, hey guys, Vidalgun, Edogad, thanks for joining in. All right. So, welcome everyone. Really excited to be here with you guys today for our first community town hall. Yeah, very exciting times. So, what are we up to today, actually? And why have we created this town hall? We heard you guys in the last month that it would be nice to have a bit more communication. So this is really an effort to do that. We'd like to create a platform for opening up discussion, for sharing knowledge between the core contributors and with the wider community. So it's really nice to see a mix of people here today. Yeah, that's basically the aim. We just want to be open and dive into some interesting stuff that we've been working on over some time, and also share our latest developments and where we're going. So today, actually, we're going to be presenting the roadmap. Thijs, the co-founder and also core contributor to the project for a very long time, will share with us the plan ahead. Then we'll dive into the latest tech with Philip, who's also core contributor, core dev. And specifically, we'll be sharing about the Dart and Dart database. After each of those sessions, there'll be some time for Q&A. In that moment, I would encourage you to please write the questions in the chat, and I will moderate those and relate them. I see people joining in. Hey, Mika. Yeah, so for every Q&A session, please use the chat. And if you'd like to join the discussion while the topic is being discussed, please raise your hand, and we encourage you also to speak up. So that's how it's going to go. Then after that, we also have a couple questions from the community. These were posed by Mass before the event, and we chose to focus on 2 today, given the time constraint. And as a note, any questions that we don't answer today, we will keep and explore in the next town halls. We expect to do these regularly from now on, and also encourage everyone to participate. Thanks so much, and we really hope that this will be a fruitful session. I'm sure it will. Guys, I can see you typing. If there's any questions at the moment. Yes, I'm pretty sure we are. let's see if let's get a confirmation on the fact that we're recording it. Yes, recording is in place. Yes, that's a really good point. There's 15 people here today, but we know that our community is bigger than that, and it's also growing. And we are really also focused on documenting the process. So we're recording the session today, and this will also be available in open access moving on. So if you're ready, I'd love to hand over the stage to you to take us through the roadmap. And if you'd like to step up on stage, there we go. I'll give the floor to you. And a quick tip, guys, in the audience, at any moment that you would like to enlarge one of the screens that you see, so if you want to see the presentation a bit larger, if you want to zoom in on Thijs, you just click the window. If you just click the window, for example, with the left click, you can zoom into the presentation and see it bigger. Nice. Hey, Thijs, welcome.
Hey, thanks. Good to be here. Can you then take the next slide, maybe, or the agenda as well? Maybe, I don't know. People need to see it. I think it's cool. I can start if.
Yes, using my screen.
Yes, it works perfectly. Cool. So yeah, I've been working on this project for some years as well, together with since we started the project in 2017, and we are moving forward. So now we take a snippet on what we expect should happen this year, what happened already, and we also have some ideas on what should happen in the next couple of years. And yeah, feel free to ask questions in the chat. I'm trying to explain this very simple overview, right? So if we just start from the outset, what are we trying to accomplish with Tagion? We're trying to create a monetary system, basically, as a common good. And that's a big vision. And so we chopped it up, basically. And one of the first things we need to do is basically make the technology work, the infrastructure, so to speak, to even create this monetary application and banking infrastructure. And we want to create you could say, an alternative to the incumbent infrastructure currently in place today. And we've been heavily inspired by a lot of economists from the past, and also the big invention of Bitcoin, the big technical breakthrough, and we want to contribute to this evolution, basically. So that's what we are doing, from a high point of view. And then if we zoom down to where we are now and what we expect should happen this year. So those of you who followed us for some years know we have done a lot of prototypes, MVPs, a lot of test networks. We have even had 300 users using the system with our applications. And so forth. We had a big test network running in November and December with a lot of learnings, which also made us change the test approach or development approach. So we have done a lot before we reached this stage. And what we are doing now, you could say from a high-level point of view, we are moving from MVP point of view, which we have done with users as well, to more production-grade components and systems. So that's what's happening this year. And we have some different milestones up here. And end of this year, in 23, we expect to have production-ready system components, basically. And that also means we can set up a main network. But I will try to explain what happens on the way here. So what already happened this year, we have Q1 is already long gone, is we have more than 3 partner projects, which is close to the Tagion project, also supporting it financially, building applications on top already and experimenting with us. So that's extremely important for adoption, and also had the first user tests. We have delivered what we call a Dart NFT API. It's where some of these partners can actually build on top of the system and store data, NFTs, data basically in the system, in the database. That's also been delivered. And that basically means we can get people to use the system and actually test it. So we get inputs. That's extremely important. So we can learn fast. And then we have a Docker version of a developer network you can set up locally coming. It's actually already out in a Docker container online, but it's basically already online, but it will soon be released. We also have Tagion Pulse, which is the name of our, we could say, future pre-production or provisioning network, which always will be running with the latest software, at least for 30 days, where you can see all the stats of how the software performs. And that's being named Tagion Pulse. It's nearly there. And then here before the summer vacation, we expect to have a homepage, basically a full new homepage. And you can see some of the new logos and colors coming up already. They are pretty far as well. Animation today here, it also looks nice on the logo. And then we expect to have a stable production version on a central server. That means like we are doing more things right now to create tooling to run the network still on one central machine, but many nodes, and have it full stable, and also like having the right debugging monitoring tools to do a lot of testing, basically. And that's what we call Tagion Shell and kernel, where we can basically control the network, the nodes, we can set up daemon networks, we can test the system and do a lot of testing, basically, and a lot of acceptance testing. So that's what we expect to have ready before summer vacation. What we already did this year is a production-grade Dart component, and our Dart is our database. The reason why we needed to create a distributed database, which the Dart is to have an easy way to structure data in a distributed manner and having an easy way to ensure the integrity of data. So basically calculate the Merkle root, like the integrity, the fingerprint of the whole database. So nodes in the network easily can compare the state and ensure they are on the same state. They have consensus on the database level. So that's a database component made for this, and that's basically been production grade tested now, which we will show and explain a bit later here in this session. So that's extremely good. Then another track running right now, it's our internal kernel node. Then we have a production-grade consensus component. So we are sure that we actually have a full production and tested consensus component, which is of course extremely important as well. So those things here on track will be delivered before the summer vacation. Then what will happen here, then the next part of the year, on the core side, we will create a synchronization service for the Dart, so it's easy to synchronize the databases over the network. That's a service that needs to be created on top of the Dart component. We need to create protocols for distributed address discovery, like so the nodes can find each other and communicate with each other. We need a way to bootstrap the network to start it up and also restart it if that's necessary. And we need a way to a protocol for the DB consensus, and that's the minimal protocols we need to actually set up a distributed system that's run. Then we need something called node swapping. We use a hash graph consensus mechanism, and that means we basically need to know how many nodes there are, and that's static. So we need a mechanism to actually swap in and out nodes so it can become permissionless and random who actually operates the system. And that's something that also needs to be implemented here after summer. That's going to happen both with the MVP, where we'll have a prototype, and then also make it production grade, do a lot of refactoring and testing. And then we need to extend our shell and kernel functionality to support more distributed setup as well. And then that's some of the main components that needs to be in place. And then, of course, we need to do a lot of acceptance testing, like testing the protocols. What happens if a node go down? What happens if we need to restart and find the state of the database and so forth? We need to do a lot of testing, ensure we have a resilient and operating stable operating system. And on that note, I think we already have our current testnet running for 63 days, so more than 2 months stable, basically, still running. So it's not like we don't have anything, but we need a lot of testing. And that's what we're doing. And that, in the end, from a core point of view, leads us to having a mainnet and production-ready system. The reason why these two are not necessarily the same, because just because you have the technology, maybe you don't want to start the operations yet. So that's, of course, something we will learn when we come closer here, exactly on when the mainnet is being launched. But the definition of a mainnet is we can transfer a real Tagion from A to B, basically, and it's a staying value on the system. It's the real value on the system. It's a value transfer of Tagions. That will be the mainnet. And if you look down here in the operations, now we have the Tagion Pulse running here, which will have the latest updated software basically running on it. We will start to set up some more provision and pre-production systems, distributed systems to test. And then when all these have passed the necessary test, we set up the mainnet basically. That's like the operations part of it. And then we have SDKs, so we can enable others to build on top. They are yellow because we have a potential delay here also because we have not prioritized it fully, because we prioritize the core components over everything else in the testing. Because if they don't work, we don't need the SDKs anyways. So that's like the logic. But we actually already now have the first versions working on iOS and Android, and we also had been in the iOS store for a year or something. But we are securing the modules, secure modules, basically having a full secure SDK package for iOS and Android. It's ongoing. That's actually on track. And then we have governance up here. Also, like, we have made concepts for governance. We have some very good ideas on how it should work already. But actually implementing the governance system, it's pretty hard when they don't have a platform or infrastructure to do it on. But we are starting up with more discussions already, and it's actually been a lot of discussions already here in the general chat. And we expect to have our first community meetup or next year, or not next year, after the summer vacation. So we can start discussing even more and also work on different governance topics as node governance, it could be monetary governance and general governance of the system. We also need to set up a foundation before we go live for regulatory reasons. So those are some of the things that happens on the governance side. And of course, these roadmaps looking forward are always like looking into a black box, right? But this is our best guess on what should happen before we can go live, because this is the main milestone now, is of course to go live and have production-ready system. So that's like what we're looking into. And then, can you hear? Somebody's writing they cannot hear me. Can you hear me actually?
I hear you fine also.
Okay.
Sorry, Mountain 30. What I would recommend maybe is to just close Discord and restart it again. Sometimes it's a bit buggy.
And I need to reinstall Discord yesterday actually as well. Yeah.
So yeah, if you try that, then let us know in the chat when you come back if it's still bad. Yeah, sorry about that.
And me and Carsten was just looking into the roadmap yesterday. Like, you know, it's always funny when you plan things, right, and look into black boxes and need to do basically innovation, invent new things and solve problems that you don't even know yet. And of course, the plan is always a best guess, right? It's always easier to make like a describe the history and look backwards, causal reasoning. It's always much easier, right? In a retrospective perspective, of course, but this is pretty solid, and we are moving according actually to a plan which we made here in January. We've actually been following and been under plan for the whole year now. And also because we have had extremely much focus on improving our continuous integration and delivery processes, so we learn as fast as even possible and also can develop software as fast as possible with the highest quality. So that has actually improved our general performance and quality / pace quite a lot. So that's extremely positive. And we are continuing to improving that as well. And we can also take a session on this one, but this is some of the core principles because this is basically software is basically, and this type of project is a learning process, right? And on all levels basically, and that's why we try to optimize each you can see track for quick learning and feedback. And now we're on plan. We're actually pretty happy and excited here in the teams, because that's extremely positive that we can stay on track and actually deliver on time as well. Yeah. And then if we also look at this plan a bit, so this is like the main bit. We have some other bullets up here. That's like, we also got a question from, I think it was Mass or somebody else, like, how well are you funded? How long can you basically continue to develop the system? We have quite a big community, investors already backing the project, like a lot. So that's extremely positive, and thank you a lot for all the trust. We're doing our best to fulfill that, and we also have commercial partnerships in the commercial company developing the system now, and they are also heavily backing the development of the system. So we have a lot of interest, not letting the project lose any kind of funding at any point in time. So that also means when we have those production components ready here, we say Tagion technology is DD ready, so it means we can open it up to new partnerships, but also in general open up the documentation so we can basically prove it works, because it is new technology, it's new infrastructure, and that means we can also start a new funding round here in next half year, where the plan is basically to get funding to develop the infrastructure even more, but also create a DEX on top and make it in fully decentralized. So secure funding for 36 months and secure that the next half year. And we're pretty confident that we'll succeed. So that's of course also something that happens, so we can continue developing the project, because it is a very long roadmap. We created a 15-year roadmap to start with, so of course we need to break it into steps, also the funding. Okay, and there was more questions. Can you help me with the questions actually? What was other questions regarding could it be the whole invest some of the yeah, okay, so can others run a node? In the future, yes, that's the idea. It should be distributed permissionless infrastructure. So yes, right now we are still testing it locally, and we're also making Dockers where you can run your own daemon networks on your own infrastructure. So it's not so easy to do right now, unless you really want to, but that's possible. But in the future, for sure, everybody who wants to tip in and participate and basically provide the infrastructure by running a node with the hardware, they can earn Tagions on this. This is the whole idea of the governance. Everybody who's participating, supplying basically infrastructure with running a node or contributing to the core, they will be paid for their work in Tagions. So this is the whole idea with the, you could say, the business model of the system, the whole governance model of the system. Could it be that holders could invest in some of the Descartes initiatives? I cannot promise what people will do, because you could say all of the projects building on top of the system, it's other interest basically or parties doing that. So we are not in control of that, of course. But we are, of course, partnering up with people building, so we can try to facilitate and make people join, for example, town halls, talk in here in general, and so forth, and make it accessible who is actually building on top. We'll try to do this. And then you can say in general, when you put assets on top of the platform, and that could be natively exchanged to Tagions, then if people that create the projects allow that transaction, that transfer basically, then of course you can invest in other projects, but that's of course up to the projects themselves to decide. But I would think that makes very good sense from a general point of view. So the functionality will be there, but it is of course up to the projects themselves to decide if they want investments into their projects or which kind of currency they accept, right? But short answer, yes. Yeah, I don't know if that makes. Did I answer somehow in a clear manner, or do I need to maybe dig more into something? Or
yeah, thanks for such a detailed exploration of the roadmap. I think it's really great to see also how different elements fit into each other. Anyone from the audience, maybe someone from the core team or someone who's just joining us now, would like to share something regarding this or ask any further questions specifically regarding maybe a component that was mentioned in the roadmap or something to do with the network development, please feel free to ask. Yeah, I see no hands raised or nothing in the chat, so nice. I guess, Thijs, you explained it pretty clearly. Thanks for that.
Okay, but maybe next slide is like people also asking a bit what's going to happen like in the future after this main milestone of the mainnet, right?
Yeah, sure. Let's go into that.
Yeah, so something we would like to also to basically, you could say, if you look at a financial system from the outset, you would like to have the infrastructure to work, of course, and that means you would like to be able to deploy your assets on the infrastructure. You would like a monetary system, so you actually have a way to do exchange and transfers on the platform with a currency, that's a Tagion, and you would also like to have a DEX, so it's easily natively just to exchange and have actually real price discovery and ordering basically and settlement on the platform natively. Because then if you have that, you basically have a full alternative financial infrastructure, so to speak. And you need those things to work together and be efficient. Because one of the most important things, for example, of a financial system is actually to support economic system, like real production of goods, services, and actually the consumption of them, and that exchange and financing the production and everything. But in order to do this efficiently, of course, one of the most important things of a marketplace is actually to decide or figure out what is actually the price of these goods and services, because this is actually a very complex mechanism. So, and in order to do this, you of course need the mechanisms to do it. So you need a DEX, a real ordering book, so we get efficient price discovery, and that means an efficient market basically. So that's of course that's one of the last main components which we would like to start develop on and make a POC for. And then we need to upgrade the TVM, the virtual machine, so it becomes more dynamically to create your own contracts and instructions to the system. Will be based on WebAssembly. Then we would like to have sub-Dart support as well. We have some support already, but also have it more natively, so it's easier to customize. That means you can create your own sub-ecosystems, basically, with your own governance rules. Okay, shared database. I mean sharded database functionality. So that's like if you have big data volumes, you can actually shard the database. So some nodes only, for example, have a part of the database stored, but still the whole system together have the full data. So from a system point of view, from a common system point of view, you optimize the storage usage in the system. That's not a problem we have right now. It requires a lot of basically users. So that becomes a problem. Then we have we want to experiment with the permissioned node governance. That's extremely important for us. And implement it basically. We want a full working DEX, not only a prototype, end of 25. And we want also the community more and more to take over the whole governance, and that's actually to start this town hall, you could say, to take over the governance and all decision making of the whole Tagion system. That's also why we're setting it up in a foundation where we go live. We want to have it on, basically you could say now, fully segregated from the financial commercial entity who's been supporting the project for like 5.5 years now. We want to segregate it out to have segregated interests. So the project is going to have its own governance and own interest covered for, and then the card as a commercial company can continue building banking products on top of the infrastructure basically, and support of course the Tagion project. But and the next step would then be the community could fully take over the whole governance of the Tagion infrastructure and system. Do we have the working Tagion monitor deployed somewhere? Yeah, it's on Pulse Tagion.org, but I'm actually not sure it's fully operational yet. It's been set up the last couple of days, but then it will be within. So Alex asked if we have the newest monitor and system running. I think we have, but I'm not sure it's operational. But then it will be within a couple of days. No. So the testnet is down now because we changed the naming to pulse.tagion.org as the community voted for. So it will be called pulse.tagion.org. But I'm not sure it's operational right now because we're actually updating to the newest version of the software. And the latest one has been running for 64 days. I'll just check it. It's still the old version running. It's been running for 69 days actually. Okay. And you can go in there and test if you want to. That will soon be updated to a newer version of both the kernel and also the shell and monitor. Yeah. Prevent large.
We have a question. We have a question here from
How do large players take control of the project when community run ahead? I cannot see it's a problem. The community run ahead, but but in general, of course, this is a very deep discussion on how we do this and also how we bootstrap the community and make sure we can give the control over to the community without not being able to later make the right decision to actually have full, you could say, community control, but also don't avoid getting strong mandates in the system. You don't want any participants to have too strong mandates because, yeah, that means it will become like a oligopoly control system or something. So that's actually something we worry quite a lot about. I think describing how it should be done, maybe that should be like in a full session next time or something. That's about the governance mechanisms. But in general, we have the idea, you could say, it's called, you could say, community respect and loyalty over time. So when you contribute over time, you can vote on each other. You can get points for what you work in, the area you work in, and by this you get like a social score. You can also stake on your name record, and the longer those records get, the more you can say voting power you get in different areas basically. So you can say the community players will get some kind of influence to some kind of maximum level, so they don't get too strong mandates, but in general those who contribute the most will also have the biggest say in the system in their different fields basically. So because we want to avoid this, and this is also why we're segregating the Tagion project from the commercial entity, because of course it's going to have different interests. I mean, having a general infrastructure interest for the common good and having a commercial interest where you want to create products that beat your competitors, you earn more money, it's two different objectives, right? So that's something where we of course need to take the stakeholder management very, very seriously, and that's what we're doing. I don't know if I answered any of your question, Mountain 30, but I try to take it like in general. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. I remember in some discussions that we were having with the core, I really like this metaphor of like a public road. If you think about Tagion as a public road where you have resources like street lamps and the road that you're driving on that is accessible to anyone. And the fact that people use this doesn't mean that it reduces the access of use to others. And if you think about what is possible to build on top, if you think about a road with shops and houses and cars and all these things that are built on top, that is what is possible also with Tagion. And I really like this analogy because it shows also the breadth of possibilities of a common good network. I don't know if that's relevant at this.
No, it makes it's a very good metaphor, and yeah. So the things that needs to be shared in common, they need to stay in this way, right? So no single participant can basically exploit this in his or her own interest. Basically, that's extremely important. Like everybody's allowed to drive on the road, but everybody can build their own cars and sell them, right, or whatever they do, drive a taxi. So yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Great. Thanks for the question, by the way. That's great. Yeah, see writing again. Also, if anyone else has any questions, just go for it. So,
I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean when the community run ahead, Mountain 30, because I don't think the community ran ahead anyways, but I think we are part of the community, but yeah.
Also, Mountain 30, if you feel like going on voice, you're also welcome.
Yeah.
I would just like to be aware of the time a little bit. I think we'll give on 4 or 5 more minutes for this Q&A session regarding the roadmap and the plan ahead. And then I would like to invite Ryan on the stage in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and then I think we can agree on for the next time we could maybe even like take the status on the roadmap, right? And you know, a roadmap always get updated from time to time. So and then we can actually say, are we on track? What's happening? What did we learn? And maybe just use a little bit less time on it. I think I will actually like to promise that. I think it's a good way to get an honest status and a quick overview. Yeah, if that makes sense for people. I don't know.
Yeah, for sure. I think being able to follow along and also maybe understand where it's possible to contribute ultimately as we grow as a project. Would also really like everyone to encourage everyone to jump on and also help build it out. So this is our aim here is to get everyone on the same page about where we are and share continuously as we develop further.
Cool.
All right. Mountain 30, I see you're typing, and we'll get back to your question afterwards. I would like to, for the interest of time, maybe move on. Thijs, hang out here for a sec. I'd like to invite Ryan to the stage. And if you're ready, of course, I don't want to call you out. Yes, nice one. Welcome. Welcome to the stage. How's it going?
Can you hear and see me?
Yes, we actually can hear you. How's the sound for you guys in the audience? If there are any problems, please let me know. Good. All right. Then, yeah.
Should I just answer the question actually before I jump off the stage?
Oh, yes, please. That's actually a great question.
So I would say like Hedera and Tagion, what they have in common, you could say, they use the same mathematical proof to actually create the consensus. But that's like the only thing they have in common. Tagion is built as a common good, as an open system, where Hedera is not. We also have, you could say, a full distributed database system that has basically consensus. They have not. So we have two different purposes and very different, basically, infrastructure and also governance. And I think the governance is the most important thing because that also tells you what you can do it, use it for, and how it becomes a common good for everyone. And I think if we're talking about monetary system or in general infrastructure for the common good, then it needs to be a common good that is extremely important. So we have big differences with Hedera, both in tech and governance. We actually have very little similarities.
Yeah, I think the most important part is that we have governance. So the problem with the hash graph is that you need to have a fixed amount of nodes when you run the consensus in the consensus. And we solve this by having governance on top of that that can swap nodes in and out, whereas Hedera only run with a fixed number of nodes all the time. So by doing that, we are able to introduce other people into the node pool and therefore have more people join and actually have an open system instead.
Yeah, exactly, Philip. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Should I just continue now, guys?
I'll jump off then. I'll try if what should I press? Leave the stage?
You can also just stay, I think it's no problem.
I can also stay, I'll just mute myself. Yeah.
Yeah, stay on stage. And also if anyone, we're also, please note that we're testing this. So if anyone also feels like jumping on stage after the Dart presentation, yeah, so we can have a discussion then. Let's see how it goes. Anyway, take it away.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll dive a bit more into the technical part with the database. My name is Philip, and I'm a core developer here at Tagion. And what I've spent the last couple of months is basically running refactoring the Dart so that I would call it now production ready, if we can say that. Tide, can you maybe turn down your volume a bit because I can hear you in my room? Sorry, guys. Okay. Where did I come from? Okay, actually a fun thing I wanted to show you is that the presentation, I know it was changed to a smaller file, but when it started up, it was actually 184 megabytes, this slide presentation that Irina posted in the channel. And if we look at our Tagion project, then it's only 71 megabytes. I just thought that was funny. And that's actually without stripping the binary. So that's just quite funny. So what I will talk about now is basically an introduction to the Dart components and so on. And then I'll talk a bit about our workflows here with the Dart, and then about our test and code coverage and bugs that we have mitigated and solved. So I think the best way to look at the Dart is probably something like this picture here. This explains the Dart modules we have. So the Dart is kind of a wrapper over everything, and inside that we have the Dart file. And the Dart file is what we use for all the heavy lifting algorithms that we run. And then we have the block file under, which is a block-based storage system. And this block-based storage system is actually where we store the data in the end. And then under that we have a recycler, which is able to recycle the segments in the block file that are no longer used. And we have block segments is the type of data storage we have. And then we have recycle segments, that's another type of segments we have. And then, in the end we have blocks. But I'll go more into detail with this later. Okay, then I think we'll talk about the Dart first. Okay, so to understand how the Dart works, it's actually easiest just to look at this picture down here. It's also in the tech paper, and this is actually also why it's called the Dart, because if you look at it, it's kind of a Dart plate. So the Dart works by having archives stored as hashes, and then storing them in a way that it's that we can calculate a bullseye in the end. So what we have here, what you see here, is the center here would be the bullseye. That's the center of our database, and that's the central hash we can get out of the entire database when we're done calculating everything. And then we have sectors here, and these are the first two rims of the database, and I'll show you this in a minute. And then we have all the different sections, and we have, this is not to scale, we actually have 65,536 of these, because we are not, it's actually not branching out in two branches, it's branching out in 256 branches each time. So instead of having this branch here, you actually have 256 new branches. So actually it's probably easier if we just show a dump of how the database looks like. So if I just do Dart util, and then I dump a database, this is what a database would look like in a more easy way, or at least for me to understand. So what you can see here is we have the bullseye, and then we have the rim 1 and rim 2. and these would be our sectors of rim 0, rim 1, and then we have all our archives out here. And right now we're using fake hash, so that's why it looks a bit odd with these numbers. And then we can actually show the data. So yeah, this is the hash of the data, and this is the index of where the data is stored. So we can then do block util, and I already have the command here. And then we can, for example, dump index 835, which is this archive here. And then we can see what data is stored here, and we can see that it's just a hex number stored. But it could in theory be anything. And this is also the power of the database, is that we can store absolutely everything. Okay, so what did we change here over the last couple of months regarding this? Because actually when you look at it from this point of view, it looks quite the same from the outside, but on the inside we have changed a whole lot. So I think I'll go back to my browser. First of all, we'll start with the block file and what has been changed. So now the block file uses something called a block segment. So instead of us storing, before we stored individual blocks and had to link them all together, now we store what's called a block segment. And a block segment then contains an entire document and then consists of multiple blocks. And this is much more efficient because we only need to change one index instead of changing the whole chain of different blocks. So it's a lot quicker. And a block segment basically then contains a document, which is our data type we use all or encoding. And that's basically just a hyphen that's immutable, and then an index of where on the disk the data is stored, you could say. So that's where your disk is pointing to. So that's a block segment, and this is new. We changed this. And the block file now looks like this. So we have a header file and a master block, and a header file is quite common for Linux. So this block contains different parameters such as the size of the file, what type of file it is, and so on. And the master block is then our main block, and this is actually the only block. You can kind of see there's like one linear chain, but the master block is the only block that points back in to the left in the data in the block file. And then we have some other types. So we have data blocks, of course, which is where we store data. And then we have recycle segments and recycle, and then these two types of statistic segments. And these statistic segments we use to analyze how our block file is basically performing, you could say. Because, of course, when you use blocks, you have to size all these blocks in the same size, which means that if you for example, want to store data that is 100 kilobytes big, and your block is 150 bytes, let's say bytes instead of kilobytes would be insane. Let's say 100 bytes big, and then you have the block size is only 75 bytes. Then you would have to use two blocks, so you get a bit of loss. But we use so small blocks that it doesn't really matter in practice. So it's not really a big problem, but it's nice to have these statistic blocks so we are sure that we are performing as good as we can in the future. So that's what they do. And then we have this new recycle segment, because one thing we also have created here in the past couple of months is a recycle for the block file. And what this allows us to do is actually recycle segments that are not used anymore. And not only that, when we, for example, have data, let's say we deleted this data here, and we deleted this data here. Then now we also have an algorithm to merge this into a completely new recycle segment that is this big, so that we don't have three different segments, but we actually have one big segment where we can store new data. So that's also very nice. And that's basically it about the block file. We have a lot of other interesting stuff about it. I could talk for hours about the block file, but I think we have to move on from that. Then about the Dart, what did we change? I think you should rather ask what did we change in the Dart file. We basically have been refactoring a whole lot in the Dart, and especially changing our algorithms for running this modify function, which is the most difficult we have. And one problem we had, we also wrote about it in the Tech General channel, if you have looked in that. But we had this problem where if we had two archives stored in this rim, then if we deleted one of them, the branch wouldn't snap back so that the data would be located up here, which in return makes it so you have long branches that are basically just empty, and that's a waste of storage, and it's not good for the synchronizer either. So therefore, we've changed it to look like this now, and the algorithm is working now. And not only this, we have also then tested it really good. We have that's probably the next section. Now we have a code coverage in the Dart, also with the block file of 92%. I think it's 92.4 if I'm not mistaken. And this is basically insane if you look at it. It's very high code coverage. I know most companies, they go for 80%, so 92% is really good. And so our unit tests are covering all these different algorithms, therefore the ones contributing for this code coverage. But not only have we made a whole lot more unit tests on the algorithmic layer, we have also made stress tests and performance tests and all kinds of tests on a higher level, also where we try to poke the system from the outside and use the database from the outside in with our high RPC calls. And that's also been great. And we have made a lot of different tests, and also our test can run multi-threaded now, so I guess we can just run our test. I'll just run with 14 cores, and then we can just look at some epilepsy stuff while we sit here. So actually, we have been really doing a lot when it comes to testing, and we also have tests now that run for multiple hours testing the database, which is also really good. And that's basically it for what I wanted to say, I think. Did I forget something important, maybe? I don't know. Or, but as you can see, the reason why it looks so weird is because we're running multi-threaded, so we actually have different tests writing to the standard out. And it's basically just because we ran into the problem that we have so many tests now that we have to make everything multi-threaded in order to have a good performance. Because for this continuous integration we're running now, it's all about getting your result as quick as possible. I'll just go to the button here. So as you can see, this was our test results, and these are some of our higher level tests. So we have some synchronization tests. Then we have also our new actors have also been tested with BDD, and then we have some pseudo-random tests, and these are just for the commit states as well. This is not the longitudinal test. I will not sit and run them now because then we won't be done today. And then we have all kinds of other stuff that we run. So that's basically it, I think. Any questions?
Yeah, and I actually think, Philip, this is very nice, right? And also the big test we did around Christmas, we got some very hard error bugs in the Dart, basically, which is actually recorded in GitHub, right? And those has been fully fixed now, right? So because it was not simple, and that means you have how much was it you told me? What is it? 89 new or full unit tests for that?
Yeah, we have 96 unit tests in the Dart now, so that's pretty good.
And 11 BDDs, right? And then you have the longitudinal test as well, where you do millions of random transactions, right? It's been pretty well tested. And when you test a lot, you'll find bugs. That's the idea, right? And
also, I think it really like with the Dart, there's really a lot to test because there's so many different types of scenarios you have. You have scenarios where you have 2 archives stored in the same branch and you delete, or you have 5 archives and you delete one of them and then you add another, and there's all kinds of insane scenarios we had to think about and make tests for. And actually we also found a bug with the synchronizer, which actually thinks it has been a problem for some time. But it's because we have made such good tests now that we can actually see it from the bottom, what is going on, which is really, really nice to have.
Cool work you did there. It's a lot of work, I know. So cool. Looks nice.
And if any questions, then you can always ask if you have anything for this, I'm more than happy to answer, if anything. Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah. Irina, yeah, what do we do now?
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty exciting to be building a database. Maybe that's not such a common thing to say, but maybe it would be cool to expand a little bit about why is it so exciting that Tagion as a project is building out this kind of database, and what are the main advantages if we're looking at this implementation in the long run?
Yeah, I kind of see it as that if you look at most infrastructure today, you have a database. Most computer systems today, they use a database. So having a database in a decentralized system, I would say, is you need this in order to make something good. And compared to IPFS or something else, what really changes us from them is that we have consensus. So we are by developing a database directly into the protocol and actually having it as one of our key components and building our consensus around this and the hash graph, we enable us to do more traditional, it will be easier to migrate traditional infrastructure onto a decentralized platform in the future. That's at least how I see it, and I think that's just really, really good to have, you could say. Yeah.
And I think it's a good angle, right? And why we created it, we actually thought we could use IPFS or simpler systems to start with, and I don't know if Carsten is here somewhere and can jump on the stage, but it was simply too inefficient, right? And so it was not in the plan to actually do this big database system. We thought we could use, for example, a version of IPFS. But you, in order to ensure you have consensus and an easy way to compare the consensus across the nodes, like the bullseye, basically. The problem with a hash tree is that you need to do a lot of calculation each time you change something. You need to recalculate the whole thing. But because we made now, you could say, a predefined structure, like the Dart structure, which Philip showed, and some methods, algorithms to calculate this, it's become extremely, you could say, efficient to calculate this and store data in a distributed manner and ensure we also have the same version of the truth, the same integrity across. That's just it, but that's pretty difficult to make because it didn't exist. I don't know, Carsten, if you want to chip in here.
Yeah, just can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
The idea with the Dart database is that, as everybody showed, is that we need to have a known state of when we have consensus, when we reach consensus from the hash graph, we need to know that the state of what we store in the database is the same. So usually you have distributed hash tables, but distributed hash tables do not intrinsically have a Merkle root. And if you want to calculate a Merkle root on a distributed hash table, it's very time consuming. What the Dart can do is that it can update the Merkle root at the same time. It can calculate the Merkle root very fast because we use sparse Merkle trees. So it's very fast to have this Merkle root, so we know the state of the database. That's in principle the whole idea. So every time we have a consensus in the network, we can store the data in each node into the database, and we know that because we know the Merkle root, or what we call the bullseye in this case. So we know that everybody has the same data in a very simple manner. That's the whole idea with this database.
Yeah, I know it's a bit clingy to say, but actually this operation for calculating the bullseye will be, we discussed it yesterday, Carsten, but it will be O to 56 or O log n basically. So meaning that it's
exactly. Just an example. So if you have like just let's say we have 1 billion archives, it would take 2 billion hash operations to calculate the Merkle root in principle if you do it in a classical way. But if we update, let's say, it actually doesn't matter, but it would probably usually only take 10,000 hashes to calculate an update. So it's a factor of a lot, and this means you can say whatever, you can just do it, but it's actually nice to have a database which is up to date, fast. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and exactly as Philip was also trying to say, if you have a normal, you could say, server-based central system, you have like storage in the bottom, but you only have one database, right? And then you have the application layer and then user inputs, right? And that's pretty easy because there is only one version of the database. There's only one truth. But now we move over to a distributed truth. Everybody needs to agree. And there we need basically a distributed storage that is efficient. So everybody has an efficient storage to build the application in a distributed manner. That's basically.
Yeah, and actually also to mention, we actually, in compared, if you look at the classical blockchain, you have a chain, and then you actually locally make a database of the UTXOs of all what you have. So you actually take the blockchain and locally do a database. We actually do the opposite. We actually have the database as the prime data truth, and the blockchain is the secondary. So yeah, that's just to explain the difference.
And I think one thing we didn't speak about now is also in the future that currently we are just having the entire database on the nodes. But in the future, when we get a lot of data, then because we have these sectors, it will be really easy to separate how much data each person is storing, so that you don't have to store 1 billion archives on your computer. I just wanted to mention that because then it wouldn't be so fun, I think. Yeah. And also we can store anything. I also think that's quite cool because we have it in Highlevel. So, yeah.
Can you just give an example of what you mean by anything?
We can store zeros and ones if you want, and we can store different types. We have types in the Highlevel. So in theory, in the future, I'm not saying it will happen now, but you would be able to store video in the database. So yeah, that's anything a normal database can store.
Yeah, that's really exciting, and also shows how that fits into our long-term roadmap. Great, thank you so much for sharing this. I hope also it was insightful for everyone as it was for me. I learned a lot today also. Keeping on to time, we've come to the end of our hour, and before we jump off, just wanted to refer back to Mountain 30. There was a question earlier. Question is, so no other crypto can be compared to Tagion. What do you guys think? A bit of a provocative question, which is it's good. It's a good one. I think it gives a lot of food for thought. Would you say there are unique features that differentiate Tagion from other crypto?
That's a big question, right? We can have discussion for hours now, I guess. So
yeah, at least we use another approach, you can say.
And I would say if we should, you could say we. I don't know what to answer here because it could be yes or no, or but it's complicated, right? We can compare to everything and nothing. It depends on how you do it and what you compare, right? So but I think the unique thing compared to other systems that must be that we have, you could say, like divided. We don't just have one, you could say, blockchain, so to speak, like for both having the longest chain with the consensus and all the data stored as well. For the same purpose, we have divided it into, you could say, more layers. And that means we could optimize the storage and the consensus and actually also the network traffic separately. So we can actually create a more efficient system. So we actually divided the different components' purposes into different layers. And that's, from a technical point of view, that makes much more efficient infrastructure. And then also, of course, we try to think in governance from the outset, like very heavily inspired by Elina Ostrom. So everything we do and all the discussions and value-driven discussion, I can promise you, we've been discussing a lot and yelling a lot about this, because we need to create solutions all the time that makes it possible to not have strong managed to have it governed by the community. And that's not so simple when you also need that to fit into the business model and the whole infrastructure part. And that's also how so it's basically value driven as well. And so we don't want the community or development to go into some kind of deadlock, because then maybe there is only the interest of the node operators wanted to keep the current version to earn most money, but the core developers will have another idea, and then there is the users who have another idea. No, we need to have all interests in the same boat and also have it incentivized by the incentive system, Tagion total system. So that means all the actors contributing and utilizing the system is in, you could say, in the same umbrella, it's in the same governance system. And that's very important. You cover for all interests in a governance system in general. So that's also one of the main approaches we have so it could be sustainable in the future. So I think that's some of the main things, right? Then also monetary policies, but I think it's a mix of the whole package, so to speak, of the purpose. Yeah, maybe others can contribute. I think it depends on what you want to compare on. I mean,
yeah, maybe we can leave it on that and leave it as food for thought, and also incentive to further research. I think that's a nice place to stop maybe today, and for the sake of time, I'd like to keep it to an hour. What do you guys think? Shall we wrap this up? Thank you so much, everyone in the audience, for joining in. This was our very first town hall, and it's really exciting to be here all together. Thank you for staying for the whole session. It means a lot. Big up everybody in the chat, everyone in the audience. Big up the speakers. Amazing. Hope we can do this again soon. Stay tuned. And we'll
thanks, Eric, for hosting.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone. Keep in touch. We'll see you soon.